sort of in.
Unmute your speaker. Does that mean we can't hear ourselves? Make sure we're recording. Yes, we're recording.
Yay.
I can see the microphone's working. Just.
Yeah. I think we've got a camera.
We do. We're all good to go. Beautiful. And it's 7 o'clock. So welcome to our seminar, our webinar tonight. We've got some creatures joining us.
Mascot. Nice, Steve. Love
it. So we are tonight talking about procrastination. It's one of my favorite topics in the whole wide world. I consider myself a bit of an expert at this one. I don't know about you, Craig. What do you think?
I think everybody
yes, we do.
experiences a little bit of procrastination in their day.
Yes.
From time to time.
Yes. And we've talked about the yin and yang on several things so far, and really in this couple, I think I win the procrastination game. Would you reckon?
I don't know. I think over time it balances out.
Right. Oh, fair enough. Over different things. Yeah. And this will make sense to you as we go along as to why that happens, where you procrastinate in some areas of your life and other things you just like, boom, I'm right in there and I can't wait to get back into it. So this is going to be really exciting tonight. So the first question that we want to address tonight is, why on earth do we procrastinate? Like, obviously putting things off makes us potentially stressed and can create a lot of pressure and actually can create a lot of problems in our lives, really, if we procrastinate long enough. In fact, eventually we maybe even give up on ourselves. But why would we bother to procrastinate? And a lot of the time when we do go into that mode, we actually beat ourselves up. Oh, I must be lazy. Oh, how stupid am I? I've done it again. And we don't really examine the reasons why procrastination takes place. But like anything in life, and particularly with human behavior, we only do things because it serves us in some way or other. So the first thing we're going to do is explore a couple of those reasons as to why procrastination may serve you. Some of these will ring true for you. You'll be able to tap into it straight away. Others you might have to think about a little bit and just go, oh yeah, now I can see that. So to be open, take some notes, and let's go going on why we procrastinate. So the number one reason we procrastinate tonight.
Hierarchy of values.
Hierarchy of values. So we live by certain values. And what does a hierarchy of values mean?
Well, we give certain importance or priority to certain values that we've grown up to establish in our lives as really important things that, underpin everything that we think and do in life. And that forms this hierarchy. So there's things that are at the top of the list and things all the way through to the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
When we, procrastination is often linked with our value system, and we find that if we're going for something, or we've got something that we need to get done or whatever, depending on where that falls within that hierarchy of values, if it's low, there's a high propensity for you to probably procrastinate on that rather than just get it done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And conversely, if it's high, then get it done.
And the tricky thing with that is everybody has a different hierarchy of values. So, for one person, it may be that they have a very high value on that task and they'll jump into it straight away. So they're the ones that you went to school with and they had that assignment done, before even due date, and you look at them and go, well, 5 minutes before, that's when you need to finish this thing. And then you've got other people who it's just not really a strong priority. And I remember when I was going through uni, if there were subjects that I didn't really feel were relevant to what I was doing, I still needed to pass them, but they just felt a little irrelevant. Then they were definitely the subjects that got the least amount of attention. And of course, they were the ones that the assignment went in, I just got it done, or last thing to study would be that particular subject because it didn't juice me. It wasn't of a high value to me, and therefore I procrastinated on it. So really, when you're looking at something that you need to do, you've got to ask yourself, is that thing that I'm going for, or if you like to call it a goal, and we're going to teach you to sort of move away from that word eventually, but is that goal inspirational enough for me to actually keep moving forward with it? Now, sometimes it's part of something bigger. So for example, that subject or two that I didn't particularly enjoy going to uni, I had to make that part of the bigger picture. Otherwise I never would have finished any of it really, because it had to be part of, I need that subject to be ticked off my list so that then I can move through and actually get the qualifications to then go out and serve the world the way that I want to serve, which is important to me. So we can always reframe and re-reference things as long as we can find that it's important enough for us to carry through. So some things may even get the boot. You just might find that you're doing it for the wrong reasons. So it's often a good time to examine that too. So the next reason that we procrastinate is a bit of a mental thing. And I like to call it the instant gratification monkey fighting the long range, big picture mind. So humans love instant gratification, don't we?
Yep.
Yeah. We love to feel certain things, and we love to feel them now. It reminds me of an experiment that was done years ago where they had kids in a room and they were told, like, there's 2 marshmallows in front of them, and if they left the marshmallows alone until the examiner came back, that they could actually have a whole heap more of like a whole packet of marshmallows or something. Now, don't quote me on that because I'm not quite sure I've got the numbers right, but they basically, for waiting and being good, they would get a much, much bigger reward. And the interesting thing was they had video of these kids, and you may have even seen it on YouTube or whatever, and they're just drooling over these 2 marshmallows and they just can't help themselves, and they're talking themselves into it and out of it and all this sort of thing. Some kids just didn't even bother, they just went straight for the marshmallows and that sort of thing. And there was occasionally 1 or 2 of the kids that would just hold off for that, and not go for the instant gratification because they knew that they would get more in the end. So they just kept holding that vision and not worrying about those 2 marshmallows in front of them so much. They, obviously they felt some tension around that, but they were able to hold the vision of, I'm going to get more if I can just keep myself under control right now. So there's always that battle going on, and it's not just in 6-year-olds, by the way. It happens in 60-year-olds as well. So that's something to be aware of. And again, like we talked about in the Backseat Driver webinar that was on a few weeks ago now, if we can identify these things as they come up, we often take a lot of the power out of them rather than just going along blindly and unconsciously, not even thinking about what we're doing, popping those marshmallows in the mouth, for example. So did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, probably, I think, no, that's probably complete there for me. It does lead us into that concept around perturbation, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is an interesting thing.
Absolutely, yeah. So perturbation is a word you may or may not have heard of before. The easiest and simplest analogy would be, say, the kettle. Did you want to explain how that works?
Yeah. We've all seen it. Whether it's a kettle or the saucepan of water, coming to the boil, it gets to that point where it's just about to start bubbling and going crazy. So it's built up, that energy, and then the tipping point occurs and it's boiling away. So perturbation is much like that, where that pressure builds and the tension and the energy builds, and then it flicks over and transforms. Sort of
Absolutely. Thing. And so, of course, the most amount of pressure that whole system is under is just before boiling point. Yep. And that's when most people give up. They actually have this feeling of, I can't take it anymore, and they just take off in the other direction, or they undo the good work that they've done or whatever. So some people actually use perturbation or that pressure to actually get things done. So that doesn't sound altogether like a bad thing. So what they do is they tend to procrastinate over something. They put it off, they build up pressure, and then they get it done, and they like, phew, made it again. The problem becomes is that, it does create a sense of drama in your life, really, doing it that way all the time. And there is a degree of beating yourself up. Like I said at the beginning, we start to go, oh, I'm so stupid for doing this again. Here I am, it's 2:00 in the morning. This thing I need to get done by tomorrow. What was I thinking, sort of thing. But they've actually become addicted to that sense of drama, haven't they?
Yeah. And it's why it's kind of unsustainable or problematic, because they feel after a while, even if it's unconscious, there's a sense that they've got to put themselves under that sort of pressure to get the motivation that they need to have the outcome that they're going for. And so that sort of ongoing pressure, can have all sorts of spin-offs where you maybe over time you stop going for stuff, you stop creating those things because it's too hard.
Much. Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas if they're starting to learn how powerful I actually are as creators, and how to do things in a certain way. They've got a more sustainable and enjoyable process of creating, where not only do they create what they want, they continue to create more and more of it.
Yeah. So. Absolutely. So, and there's a certain way that we create these addictions in our body. Initially, it's in the brain, and then eventually it's actually the cells of the body that are craving that feeling. So again, that's a whole topic for a whole nother conversation, I reckon, because it's pretty interesting how that all comes together. So the final thing is that we could come up with procrastination. If you can think of something else, feel free to pop it in the chat box. But for tonight, the next thing, which is a little bit surprising, is that procrastination actually gives you an excuse to fail. So that sounds really ridiculous, doesn't it? But imagine you've not quite made the target, or you've had to go and ask for an extension. Again, it could be because you have an addiction to having, a little bit of excitement in your life, for want of a better word. Excitement and fear have very similar feelings, by the way. But even if you have to blame yourself, it gives you this excuse to fail. Oh, I just didn't get myself organized. And whatever it is that's, you can perceive has created that procrastination. And then you can actually use that as your story as to why you didn't get the result that you thought you wanted. Now, say you thought you wanted, because if you really did want it, you would have moved mountains to make sure that it happened. But there is very much a procrastination factor creating an excuse to fail, which then validates our backseat driver from our first or second webinar. So if you wanted to find that, scroll back through the group and you'll see the link for that one. But our backseat driver loves it when we're failing, because as you know from that webinar, all that negative self-talk can come up. It gives you I am statements like, as I said, I am lazy, I am stupid. And from there, the backseat driver gets to express itself with behaviors that it really loves to take for a ride, like maybe eating too much, or going for a drink, or hanging out with your buddies that, are not necessarily the best influence in the world, and that sort of thing. So the backseat driver is very much validated when we fail, and we've got a perfect excuse, and it's easy for us to put our hand up and go, well, I just didn't get my act together, or whatever. So,
and the thing when you say the backseat driver gets that validation, I guess it's because as we now know with the backseat driver, it's made up of thought forms. So it's made up of beliefs about how you are in the world and how the world is as well. So when you set out on something and you fail, or you procrastinate through to not actually making it happen, it validates those stories that your backseat driver holds as true about you and about the world. So it's always seeking validation. It wants to know that the way it believes things are is the way they are. And so it'll literally it'll cause procrastination. It'll create outcomes in your life to ensure that those stories stay true and intact.
Yeah, you got evidence.
That's right. Yeah. Because anything contrary to that spells death to the backseat driver. So it's a very serious problem for the backseat driver to be wrong. So that's interesting.
Absolutely. So very good. So I might come back to that, because there was something else that popped into my mind then, and it's usually pretty good when that happens. But anyway, we'll see if it pops back in again. So we're going to flip it over now the other way to, so what do we do now that we've identified that procrastination is a tool? It's a tool that we use. That's what the other thing was. It's actually a tool we even use to identify ourselves. I'm sure that we all know somebody, maybe even intimately, somebody who says, I am a procrastinator. So it could be, you may have even caught yourself saying that, right? So that actually then means it's part of your identity. You feel that is who you are. Now, when we're talking about identity, the human psyche is very, very strong when it forms an identity around something. It will actually, it takes a lot of momentum to change what you think about your identity. So for example, I'm a non-smoker. I think I tried one cigarette when I was about 15 that a friend had, and really on that one thing I decided wasn't for me. So my identity's always been I'm a non-smoker. So if someone said to me, here's a packet of cigarettes, pop it in your pocket and a lighter and stuff, you're now a smoker, I'd just be like, yeah, whatever. So that does not sit with my identity at all. Whereas someone who is a smoker who's given up, if that's their identity, they'll always be a smoker. Whereas if they can reconfigure their identity to be a non-smoker, the chances of them giving up for good are actually much stronger, but it actually takes a change in their identity. So really important that when we catch ourselves saying something like, I'm a procrastinator, unless you want to be a procrastinator in your life, make sure you change the language. The language is very, very strong in how it imprints in our brain. So back to how we overcome our procrastination thing. So first thing is that thing that I'm going for actually true for me? Is it something that's in alignment with who I am, who I'm becoming, my mission and purpose in life, the types of things that I want to create? How important is that?
That's super important. It excuse me. If you're going for something it's somebody else's thing, and you're somehow allowed yourself to be roped into going for it, you can be pretty sure. At the very least, you're going to struggle, and whether or not you actually achieve that outcome is iffy.
Iffy, at the very least.
There's no why. There's no.
There's iffy waving away.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's super important to have a strong why as to why you're setting out to do anything that you do. Otherwise, yeah, you can be pretty sure there's going to be suffering and struggle in there.
Absolutely. And that shows up in lots of ways. Like a lot of the things that we undertake, it's not really something that we've decided we want to do. It could be because we've got a family or a parental expectation that we're going to become an XYZ, or we should behave in a certain way. There may be our peers, maybe our friends have said, hey, let's go and do a course in such and such, and at the time it sounded really good, you all go and sign up for it, and then halfway through you're like, oh wow, this isn't really me. So it's making sure that when we are moving forward, growth is a really important part of the human experience, but if we're moving forward, we need to make sure it feels authentic and true for who we really are. You can only truly live your true nature and purpose. If you're off track, it'll feel wrong. It won't be something you'll be able to carry on, and what little warning sign is you're procrastinating around it a lot. So make sure.
What's interesting with that too is that once you know that you're on track for what's true to you, you'll be riding or running on inspired energy, and there'll be natural action that you'll be taking because it's just super obvious that this is the thing that leads me in that direction, sort of thing. It's very different to having to source like motivational energy so that you can keep trudging away at this outcome. They're two very different worlds, and that's the difference between having something that's true for you that you're undertaking and not.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know that feeling when you're in the zone. When you're in flow, it feels unbelievably amazing and good. And that's where you can live most of your life, in that feeling of flow. Yeah. It's not being too up, as we talked about in the being too positive webinar, that it's actually in the center zone. You just feel like you're totally in the right zone. Just going to break here for a sec because Mona just referenced a book that was really good. I haven't actually read this one, Mona, but I trust your reference because you're an amazing lady. So The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Hopefully I said that correct. That's Duhigg. And the other book that I found amazing too, which is probably a similar thing, which it was Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. So two really good books there that Mona and myself can recommend if you're into reading. I read tons of books and love it. So do you. So yeah, so that was a really good one as well. But I'll check that one out too. Thanks, Mona. Straight after the retreat, because the next few weeks are pretty full on just getting that one sorted. So basically, if you are and if you tap in and you actually go, okay, now I do know I'm on the right path. So what I need to do now is potentially reorientate my why. Is this important enough to me? And if it is, which you've decided, because you've decided it is on your true mission and your true nature, then it may take a little bit of reconfiguring and just bringing things back into perspective so that that task or those tasks you have in front of you become important enough that you can actually take action on them and feel inspired to take action, because there's nothing worse than giving yourself a kick up the bum and forcing yourself to take action. It's a lot easier to lead yourself along a path feeling inspired by it rather than go, oh, I've got to, I have to. It's very low energy when we're saying words like that, as opposed to I get to, or I can't wait to, so there's a really different feeling between the two. So we want to make sure that we're tapping in again with our language and knowing we're on the right path. It's all good. By the way, we do get a little bit upset when we have to, upset somebody when we backtrack. It's okay. It's your life. You get to live it. So, sometimes we just need to have those integrity conversations and move forward with what's true for us. So don't be scared of that. It's actually really important that we learn to do that too. And so if it really isn't true for you, take it off the table. And if you're not too sure, this is a really cool little thing you can do. You can actually sit there feeling into what it would be like to have your outcome, and then come out of that and feel what it would be like to not have the outcome. You might be quite surprised with what you actually come up with. You thought you were going for X, Y, Z, and then you sit into not having that outcome and you go, actually, that feels really good. I feel freer in that way. Or you take it off the table and you go, oh, actually, yeah, I'd be sad if I lost that part of myself. So I'll keep moving forward in this direction.
And I think it's when you do that process, just be sort of conscious about where you're at with regard to perturbation as well. Because if you've built
Yes.
up some beautiful momentum and things are really starting to get to that boiling point, and there's plenty of pressure and energy built up there, it's probably not the best time to sit down and go, is this really my thing? Because you might find that you boot yourself
You're running
out.
away.
Yeah.
Your ego is just drawing you back to your comfort zone. So
these are the sorts of things. It's tricky in half an hour to cover it with any depth, but they're the sorts of things that we go much deeper in the retreat on, because it gives you those subtle but powerful distinctions on knowing where you're at any given time and throughout that creative process. So it's really valid, but it's just about being a little bit aware when you're using some of these tools, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
And I was thinking too, another thing that can happen is when you're going for something that you believe is really true for you, it feels true, you can still have procrastination creep in and to hold you back from the outcome, because the outcome you enjoy the process, you enjoy how that feels to be creating something, or might be building something. You don't want it to end. You don't know that, but unconsciously you don't want it to end, so you'll procrastinate and draw the process out as long as you can, but you don't have
half-finished projects in the house.
That's right. So, it's just an interesting thing, because you might be loving what you're doing and yet procrastination kicks in and you're thinking, why is this? This is true for me.
Yeah. Rather than having another project to go on with once you're finished.
Once you realise you can do that, you can go, right, that's done, next, and keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really important part. So, it's there's a lot of gurus out there, a lot of time management people, a lot of goal setting gurus, all those sorts of things. And look, those two tools are all really good. And I know I've pretty much done every course known to man as far as time management goes and all that sort of stuff. And you've done a few as well, haven't you? Over the years. And look, the problem with that sort of mindset is that it's very doing based. It's very, you just have to force yourself. So as I said before, the forcing thing doesn't really work. You've got to make sure that you're in that flow. So if you do find yourself procrastinating, then you start reaching for the next time management book or reading something that says, right, well, just take, the first step and do something every day, or work for an hour, set a timer, Sometimes that could be useful, but really it's not going to give you sustainable long-term results when you're going for what you'd really love in life. We want tools available to us that we can use regularly all the time for the rest of our life to create the outcomes that we want, rather than relying on little things that are going to force us to make the changes, because you're not going to get through life beating yourself up. It just doesn't work that way. So it takes a bit of creative process, doesn't it?
Yep.
And that looks like
it's not always a comfortable thing, because sometimes you're kind of taking that which you've come to know as true, and you're breaking it up a little bit, and it's you're making it a bit unstable and bringing some new concepts in to take its place. And that change can be uncomfortable. But I mean, I think change is always has a degree of discomfort to it.
Absolutely.
And it's okay.
And that might be, or not just because you're feeling discomfort, because you've got to actually move forward and do some things and change yourself. But also, you know, sometimes we get a bit worried because it's like, well, if I change, then my friends won't like me anymore, or I'm going to have to listen to my mum whinging at me because, you know, she doesn't believe what I'm doing is the right path for me, and all these sorts of things. But we should never really limit ourselves and who we are based on the people around us. You know, we can still love our family and we can hang with our friends and all that sort of thing, but really ultimately it's up to you to live the life that you want. They're not going to live it for you. And I've often said to my kids, look, when they're saying, oh, my friend said such and such, it's like, well, your friend's not going to fix that for you. They can empathize with you and feel sad for you or whatever, but you know, excuse my French, but if shit hits the fan, they're not going to have to live with that. You have to live with that. So don't make your decision based on what your friends are saying or not saying. Make it on what your heart's saying, what you really feel that you need to go for. So creating, you know, what you love always looks like pain. There's always a degree of something that you either have to put some effort in, or some focus, or some time, or some money, whatever it is, there's going to be some pain involved with that. So, you know, and they're our key resources. So we always want to make sure that we're looking for what we'd love to create, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, sitting with that tension, knowing that it's true for us, and moving forward regardless, and being inspired to move forward because it means something to us. It's something that's important.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else to add?
No, I don't think so. I think that statement, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, it's I think what really helps there is understanding what that's about, the perturbation. How is it helping this process of me creating what I'd love? You know, and when you know just how important it is, you don't, you know, it's not happening without it, sort of thing. So then you start to be able to learn to relax into that a bit and realize that it's what it is and what it's not. You know, so.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, if you're feeling too comfortable about the process, you've probably either shrunk your vision to be an easy goal to get to, or you're basically taking it too crazy. You got the wrong goal, really, altogether. You know, there should be a tension there, because that's what drives the creative process. Without it, we're not actually creating. We're just, you know, hanging. We're just doing what everybody else does and hanging there. Now, we've got a couple minutes left, so anyone have any questions? Now would be the time. Just pop them in the chat box to do with procrastination. And of course, while we're waiting to see if anyone's got any questions, just mention the retreat. So at the moment, this is April of 2018, because you might be watching this in 2020.
Yep.
Yeah, when we're really super big and we've got thousands of these things. But anyway, so we've got a retreat starting May the 1st on the Gold Coast, and it's going to be amazing. So we'll be talking a lot about how to actually manage your thought processes and all sorts of amazing things. Getting rid of things that are blocking you, and then moving through into the creative process so that we can actually manage both at the same time. Very important. A lot of times we're running around trying to fix ourselves, or there's something broken in our psychology, something broken about you. You're perfect. All we need to do is learn how to manage the thoughts and feelings that can be coming up, acknowledge them. We can't get rid of them, so we might as well acknowledge them for what they are, and then we can actually use that as our tension, part of our tension building, to do our creating as well. So that's really super cool. So if you want to know more about the retreat, let us know. You can always drop us a message in the group. So it looks like we don't have any questions tonight. If you're watching this on the recording, feel free to pop your questions in the comments. Craig and I are usually monitoring it pretty regularly, and we look forward to really helping you out. So hopefully we'll see you guys next Thursday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Not sure the topic yet. Keep your eyes peeled. We'll pop that up when the inspiration hits, as it always does.
Have an awesome night. Thanks for jumping on the call tonight, and thanks for listening to the recording as well. So
yeah, beautiful.
look forward to
we just had an animal down.
Yeah. Koala.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.